He hadn't eaten in 2 days. But when the old woman started crying, Jack slid his daughter's only meal across the table without blinking. The bell above Murphy's diner door gave a tired jingle as Jack Turner pushed it open with one shoulder, the other hand steadying a small umbrella over his daughter's head. Rain pelted the glass in furious rhythm, soaking the floor behind them. The diner's warm yellow lights cast a faint glow on the checkerboard tiles, flickering slightly with each thunderclap. Sophie, barely 8, clung to her father's arm with sleepy eyes and cold fingers. Her hair was damp at the edges and her little sneakers squelched with each step. "You sure you want to eat here, honey?" Jack asked, brushing her wet bangs away from her forehead. Sophie nodded, shivering but smiling. "Only place that smells like home." Jack managed a tired chuckle. She had no idea how much those words meant to him. They slipped into a booth near the window. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. Inside was exactly $7.49 saved over 3 days, skipping lunches, walking miles instead of paying bus fare, refilling water bottles instead of buying coffee from the vending machine at work. That envelope was Sophie's burger, her fries, maybe even a soda if they split it. He looked across the table. Sophie's cheeks were flushed from the cold, but her eyes sparkled with something far more valuable than warmth, hope. Jack raised his hand. Sandy, the evening waitress, waved from behind the counter. "Be right with you, sugar." At the far end of the diner near the corner booth sat an elderly couple. Jack noticed them when he walked in. The man's suit was soaked through the woman's silver hair hung limp against her designer coat. A pair of coffee mugs sat in front of them, steam long gone. Something about them didn't fit. They looked expensive, but they also looked lost. Jack glanced away. Not his business. Sandy approached with her notepad. "What can I get for you two tonight?" Jack nodded at Sophie. "1 Murphy Classic burger, extra pickles, side of fries. Water, no ice." Sandy raised a brow. "You sure, Jack?" "Nothing for you." Jack smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just the burger." "We'll split it." Sophie beamed. "And he gets the pickles. He always gives me his pickles." Sandy's gaze lingered a second longer than usual. She didn't say anything. She just walked away, writing. As they waited, Jack tried to ignore the rising voices from the corner booth. The old woman was rummaging frantically through her purse. Tissues, lipstick, receipts, no wallet. The man checked his pockets, then again, patting himself down with increasing desperation. "I had it." "When we left the house," the woman whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "I'm sure I did," she added, more to herself than to him. The man sighed, pulling out a gold pocket watch and staring at it like it might magically turn into cash. It didn't. Sandy approached their table, holding a small slip. "Folks, I'm sorry, but we don't run tabs." "We're not asking for charity," the man said, quietly dignified. "We just misplaced our wallet. We can leave collateral." Sandy shook her head. "Mike doesn't make exceptions." From the kitchen, Big Mike appeared, arms crossed, jaw set. "Look, I get it," he said, voice gruff. "But rules are rules." "We'll go," the woman murmured. Her hands shook as she gathered her things, a leather folder paper spilling slightly from the edges. Her husband stood gently supporting her. The wind outside howled louder. Lightning cracked across the sky. Their car was nowhere in sight. Jack looked at Sophie. She was staring at the couple. Her eyes, those impossibly large brown eyes, filled with something Jack knew all too well. Empathy. She leaned across the table, tugged Jack's sleeve, and whispered, "We can share Daddy." He looked down at the tray Sandy had just placed in front of them. The bun still steamed. The fries were golden and crisp. Sophie's favorite meal. 3 days of sacrifice. He closed his eyes for half a second, then stood. Sir Sandy called after him. Jack didn't respond. He crossed the diner tray in hand. The old couple had reached the door. The man's hand was on the handle, ready to step out into the storm. "Wait," Jack said, his voice calm and clear. the kind of voice that came from someplace deeper than logic. "Please." They turned. Jack set the tray down on the closest table. "This one's on us tonight," he said. The woman blinked rapidly. "Oh, no. We couldn't." That's Jack raised a hand. "You can, and you will." Sophie appeared beside him, offering a fry with a proud grin. "They're better when you share," she said. The old man looked at Jack, not just looked studied. His eyes, pale blue and piercing, held Jack in place like a spotlight. After a beat, he extended a hand. "Thank you, son." Jack nodded. "Eat while it's hot." As they sat, the woman gently unfolding napkins, the man adjusting the leather folder on the table. Jack turned to head back. Before he did, he saw the man scribble something onto a napkin. A name. An address. Jack's name. Strange. But Jack didn't dwell. He slid back into the booth with Sophie now munching on a single fry legs swinging beneath the table. "Are you hungry, Daddy?" He smiled. "Not anymore." Behind him, the couple quietly shared the burger, whispering to each other in a language Jack didn't quite understand. Not because it was foreign, but because it came from a world he'd never belonged to. A world of hidden folders, gold watches, and eyes that looked far past the surface. But none of that mattered now. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a single act of kindness lit a corner booth with warmth no rain could wash away. And somewhere in that glow, unnoticed, a quiet test was already complete. "You'd be surprised," the old man said, wiping mustard from the corner of his mouth, "how much truth comes out over a shared meal." Jack didn't respond immediately. He was still unsure why he'd agreed to sit down. Sophie had nudged him toward the booth, whispering, "They look lonely. Daddy." And that was it. That was all it took. Now he sat across from two strangers, his daughter perched beside him, sharing fries like it was just another Tuesday, not a storm-soaked midnight in Manhattan. The woman, Margaret she'd said, had elegant hands, though slightly trembled as she reached for her coffee. Her coat, though damp, was clearly expensive. Real wool. Jack recognized quality when he saw it, even if he hadn't worn it in years. Her husband Harold wore a face lined with time, but eyes as sharp as broken glass. Not cruel, but calculating, the kind of man who noticed everything without needing to look twice. "Do you always do things like that?" Margaret asked, breaking the silence. "Giving away your dinner?" Jack sipped his water, then glanced at Sophie, who was now folding her napkin into a little heart. "No," he said finally. "Only when it matters." Harold tilted his head. "And how do you know when it matters?" Jack looked out the rain-speckled window for a long beat. "When someone's pride is louder than their hunger," he said softly. "That's usually when it matters most." Margaret exhaled, almost as if she'd been holding her breath. Sophie chimed in. "Grandma says we're not rich, but we're rich in the right places." Harold chuckled. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She is," Jack said. "She raised me, and now helps me raise her." Margaret's brows lifted. "You take care of your mother." Jack nodded. "Best I can. She's not well, but she's proud. Still insists on making tea every morning, even if she can barely stand." "Where's your wife?" Harold asked gently. Sophie looked up, suddenly quiet. Jack's jaw tightened slightly. "Gone. Cancer." A moment of respectful silence passed over the table. "I'm sorry," Harold said. Jack nodded once. "Me too." Margaret reached out instinctively and touched Sophie's hand. "You're a brave girl." Sophie offered a soft smile. "Daddy says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you care anyway." That line hit Margaret like a shiver. She pulled her hand back slowly. Harold leaned forward, elbows on the table. "So what's the plan?" "Jack, the plan. The plan, for you. For her." He gestured subtly toward Sophie. "For what comes next?" Jack hesitated. No one usually asked him that. "Not like that. I work nights. janitor at the Sterling Tower. He paused, almost embarrassed to name such a place. I clean offices where the windows are taller than our whole apartment. Harold smiled. And I'm saving. Jack continued. There's an old community center in our neighborhood. Been shut down for years, broken pipes, leaky roof, no funding. But if I could fix it, it could be something again. A place for kids to go after school, seniors to get warm meals, maybe even teach job skills. Margaret's eyes brightened. You want to rebuild it? Jack nodded. Not for money, for the neighborhood, for Sophie's future. Harold leaned back. What do you want for her? Jack didn't even blink. A place where kindness isn't a luxury. Silence blanketed the table. Margaret swallowed hard. That's beautifully said. Jack shrugged, almost bashful. It's just the truth. Harold reached into his inner coat pocket and pulled out a sleek pen. He grabbed a napkin, then looked to Jack. Your name? Full name. Jack hesitated. Why? Harold smiled gently. I forget things. Faces sometimes. But not people. Jack relented. Jack Turner. Harold scribbled something down. Address Jack blinked. That's personal, I understand, Harold said. But I give you my word, it stays between us. Jack studied the man's face, not the expression, but the eyes. And what he saw there wasn't greed or pity. It was something far rarer. Respect. 1427 Elm Street. Jack finally said, Top floor, apartment B. Harold nodded and folded the napkin, precisely sliding it into his pocket like it was a business card. Moments later, the towing company pulled up outside. Margaret straightened her coat, then gathered the leather folder she'd kept close throughout dinner. As she stood, some of the papers inside shifted, and for just a second Jack caught a glimpse of a gold-embossed logo. Familiar, elegant. But he couldn't quite place it. Thank you, Margaret said sincerely. You've done more than you know. You take care, Jack replied, standing as well. And maybe next time, bring the wallet. Harold laughed a rich, genuine sound. Fair point. Then with one last glance at Sophie, he offered a nod. Stay brave, little one. Sophie waved. Only if you promise to stay dry. As the couple stepped outside into the rain which had eased into a soft drizzle, Jack watched through the window. The man who couldn't pay for coffee pulled a thick leather wallet from his coat and handed something to the tow driver. Crisp, clean bills. Jack's brow furrowed. Something didn't add up. He turned to Sandy, who had been leaning quietly against the counter, arms crossed. You see that? He asked. She nodded slowly. I've been working this place for 12 years. And that, my friend, was not a coincidence. Jack exhaled. Think they were scamming? Sandy shook her head. No, scammers don't ask questions like that. Jack glanced back at the booth they'd just left. The coffee mug's now empty. A few fry crumbs. A folded napkin. Feels like I just walked into something bigger than I understand. Sandy looked at him for a long moment, then said something he'd remember for years. Kindness has a way of echoing Jack. You don't always know where it lands, but it always lands somewhere. Behind them, near the back corner of the diner, a man in a black overcoat rose silently from a booth, a man no one had noticed before, and stepped out into the misty night without a word. The kettle on the stove let out a soft whistle, but Jack didn't move. He stood by the kitchen window watching the rain trace lazy lines down the glass, his calloused hands wrapped around a chipped mug. Behind him, the tiny apartment buzzed with the morning rituals of a family that never had enough time or money to waste. Sophie sat at the kitchen table humming as she packed her lunch 2 pieces of bread with peanut butter and a half banana wrapped in foil. No complaints. Never complaints. His mother, Miss Ruby, shuffled in from the bedroom wrapped in a faded robe and dignity. You didn't sleep, she said gently, eyeing him over her oxygen tank. Didn't need to, Jack replied. Too much in my head. Miss Ruby settled into her chair, her movements slow but purposeful. So, You gonna tell me what's rattling around in that mind of yours, or do I have to play guessing games before breakfast?" Jack took a seat across from her, his voice low. "There was this couple. Last night, looked lost, said they didn't have money for their coffee. Sophie and I gave them our dinner." Miss Ruby raised an eyebrow. "You gave away that burger." Jack nodded. She shook her head, not in disapproval, but in something like weary awe. "Baby, you hadn't eaten in 2 days." "I know," he said, but they looked proud. Desperate and proud. It didn't feel right letting them leave empty. Miss Ruby leaned forward, her hand finding his. "Sometimes angels test us in disguise. See if we'll share when we've got almost nothing left." Jack chuckled softly. Angels with designer coats and gold watches. Even angels wear coats, baby. Especially in this weather. Sophie piped up from the table, swinging her legs. They smiled real big when Daddy gave them the tray. Like their hearts got warm all of a sudden. Jack smiled at her, tousled her hair. "She's got your eyes," Miss Ruby said. "But that heart, that's yours, Jack. Don't forget that." The break room smelled like burnt coffee and bleach. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Jack changed into his uniform, trying not to draw attention. No such luck. "You hear about Turner," one of the guys snorted. "Benny, mid-30s, always too loud and too bored. Gave his dinner to strangers last night like he's some kind of saint," another added, laughing. "Should put up a statue." Jack the Generous. Jack didn't flinch. He grabbed his mop strapped on the utility belt and headed out, but not before Benny called out, "Hey, Jack, maybe next time just Venmo the whole diner while you're at it." Jack paused at the door. "I'll keep that in mind. Right after I learn how to afford a phone plan." Chuckles, a few snorts. But Jack kept walking. The hallway felt colder that morning. Or maybe he was just tired of being the punchline in rooms where no one remembered what kindness looked like. He stopped by the maintenance elevator and exhaled slowly. Sophie's words from earlier rang in his mind like a melody. Kindness always grows back, even when people step on it. Across the city in a building Jack had only ever cleaned from the outside and a completely different scene was unfolding. A sleek black folder was slid across a marble conference table. The room was glass-walled overlooking Midtown Manhattan power disguised as transparency. Inside the folder, clipped to the top, was a photograph. Jack Turner, pushing a shopping cart full of cleaning supplies, helping an elderly woman across the street, carrying Sophie's backpack as they crossed toward a public school. Below the photo, candidate number 6. He passed the field test, a calm male voice said. A woman, her face not seen, only the back of her head framed by soft curls and sharp poise, stood facing the skyline. 3 days of monitoring, she asked. Yes, ma'am. All consistent with preliminary reports. Neighbors, co-workers, teachers. No red flags. Single father. Primary caretaker for both daughter and aging mother. Maintains employment. No legal issues. GPA from his GED was above average. Character references from his community are glowing. The woman didn't respond. Instead, she placed one hand against the cold glass. The city below bustled taxis, honking umbrellas, jostling the pulse of people with places to be. "Is he strong?" she asked at last. The man behind her paused. "Strong? Yes," she said, turning slightly just enough to reveal the edge of a designer blazer. "Kindness is easy when no one's watching. But we're not building a fairy tale, Mr. Langley. We're investing in legacy. Can he hold up under pressure?" Langley adjusted his tie. "From what I've seen, he hasn't broken yet." The woman turned back to the window. "No one ever breaks on day one," she said. "Schedule the next phase?" "Yes, Mrs. Sterling." She didn't reply, but her reflection in the glass framed against a storm-washed sky looked less like a CEO and more like someone peering into a mirror she wasn't sure she trusted. The apartment was quiet. Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch, curled up under the quilt Miss Ruby made from old T-shirts and denim scraps. The television hummed with static before switching to the late-night news. Jack sat at the kitchen table, the envelope with the last of his savings now empty. But his mind wasn't on money. It was on the napkin. He had unfolded it 3 times since coming home. His name, his address, scrawled in neat, deliberate handwriting. He wasn't sure why it lingered in his thoughts. Maybe because of the way the man folded it like it mattered, or the way the woman clutched that leather folder with the gold emblem. Something about that logo gnawed at his memory. And still, he couldn't explain why it felt like his life had shifted by 1 quiet degree and nothing looked quite the same. As he dimmed the lights, Jack whispered to himself, "If that was a test." I didn't study for it. From outside the window far off in the city lights a black car idled. Inside, a man in a suit tapped a file labeled Candidate Number 6 before making a silent call. "Mr. Turner, they want to see you upstairs." Jack froze mid-mop, his grip tightening on the worn wooden handle. The voice belonged to a security guard in a blazer too crisp for comfort, holding a clipboard like it was a badge of authority. The kind of guy who never made eye contact with janitors until now. Jack straightened slowly. Upstairs, 54th floor. Executive wing. Jack blinked. There must be a mistake. The guard checked the clipboard again. "Jack Turner, ID 76482. Janitor night rotation. They asked for you by name." The air in the hallway shifted. It wasn't just curiosity, it was tension. 2 interns passed by, whispering. A receptionist paused her typing. Even Benny, the wisecracking janitor, peeked around the corner, eyebrows raised. Jack wiped his hands on his pants. "What's this about?" "Don't know," the guard said, "but they don't like waiting." The elevator ride was silent. Jack had never been above the 20th floor. His world was the underbelly, the basement boilers, the utility closets, the back hallways no one thought to clean unless someone like him did it. As the elevator climbed past floor after floor of polished glass and money-soaked silence, Jack's reflection in the mirror caught his eye, tired eyes, rough stubble uniform still damp at the cuffs from last night's storm. The doors opened with a soft chime. Carpet, quiet. Air that smelled like decisions. A woman in all black stood by the reception desk. "Mr. Turner, this way." She didn't ask if he knew why he was there. She didn't smile. She simply led him down a hall lined with frosted glass past names engraved in gold toward a corner office where the blinds were half drawn against the rising sun. The door opened, and Jack stopped in his tracks. Sitting at the head of a long oak table were the couple from the diner. Dry now, cleaned up, dignified. Margaret wore a navy blazer over a cream blouse, her hair pulled back into a neat bun. The leather folder was in her lap. Harold sat beside her, posture straight, gold watch gleaming. No rain, no coffee stains, no desperation, and across from them, seated with the poise of a woman who rarely heard the word no, was someone Jack didn't recognize, not fully. She looked young but carried herself like she wasn't. Hair swept into a sleek twist, diamond-cut stud earrings, a navy suit so perfectly tailored it looked like it had been poured onto her shoulders. Her eyes met Jack's, steady, assessing, calm. "Mr. Turner," she said, "please sit." Jack remained standing. "No offense, but I work with a mop, not suits." "What's this about?" Margaret offered a warm smile. "Please, Jack, just hear her out." Jack's gaze shifted back to the woman. "You were at the diner?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I was watching." Jack blinked, watching Harold folded his hands. "Jack, what happened last night, it wasn't an accident." Jack's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" The woman leaned forward, resting her arms on the table. The situation was designed, controlled, observed. We needed to see something. And we did. Jack's eyes narrowed. "You mean that wasn't real?" "It was real," she said calmly, "but it was also a test." Jack's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "You tested me. We evaluated you," she replied. Jack turned toward Margaret. "My daughter gave up her dinner, 3 days of savings, because she saw 2 people in need, and you sat there pretending." Margaret opened her mouth, but Jack cut in, voice sharper now. You played with my daughter's hunger." Harold stood slowly. "Mr. Turner." "No, Jack," snapped. "Don't Mr. Turner me. You pretended to be broke. You made Sophie believe you needed help, that we were helping someone real." The woman remained still. "The test was designed. But your kindness wasn't. That's what matters." Jack stared at her, breathing hard. "You don't get to define what matters to me." A silence fell over the room, thick and uncomfortable. The woman finally pushed a folder across the table. Jack didn't touch it. Inside was a document stamped with gold bearing the Sterling Foundation's seal. There were numbers, large ones, and names, his Sophie's. Harold spoke gently now. "We're offering you a position, Jack. Project manager for a new community development center. Your neighborhood, your people, your vision." The woman added, "And a full scholarship for your daughter. Any private school of your choice, paid in full." Jack didn't even look at the papers. He shook his head, voice low. "Charity wrapped in deceit is still deceit." Margaret's smile faltered. "It's not charity." "Yes, it is," Jack said. "You just dressed it up in paperwork." He turned toward the door. "We thought you'd want to make a difference," the woman called after him. Jack stopped. Hand on the doorknob. He turned his head slightly. "I am making a difference. Every floor I mop. Every lunch I pack. Every night I get my daughter home safe. That's a difference." And then softer. "But you wouldn't see that from up here." He walked out without another word. Jack stepped off the elevator, heart pounding. He passed a row of monitors near the security desk, not even glancing at them, but one screen showed the front page of the New York Ledger morning edition. A headline read, "Emma Sterling announces new philanthropic push across Manhattan boroughs." Below it a photo. Her face, the woman from upstairs. Jack stopped. Emma Sterling, CEO, philanthropist, billionaire. So that was who he'd just told off. Rain tapped against the window pane like a clock ticking in reverse. Jack sat at the tiny kitchen table, fingers laced, staring at a folder he hadn't opened. The offer was still there. Sophie's scholarship, the project manager role, the chance to rebuild the old community center from the ground up. All of it tied with a ribbon of corporate generosity. But it wasn't the numbers that haunted him. It was how they came. Across the room, his mother stood by the stove, stirring a kettle. She'd been quiet most of the evening, letting Jack pace rant and go silent again. Now she set a chipped mug of chamomile tea in front of him. "Thanks," Ma, Jack mumbled. She sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. "Do you remember your father's hammer?" she asked gently. Jack blinked. "The red-handled one." "Of course. He used to say, 'A man should know the weight of the tool he swings, and the cost when he refuses to use it.'" Jack gave a tired chuckle. "Sounds like him." She leaned in. "Jack, I know why you're angry, and I don't blame you, but pride won't patch the roof. Opportunity might." He looked down. "They lied. They tested," she said softly. "The world does that. Not always with permission." Jack's jaw tensed. "They humiliated us, Ma. Made Sophie believe those people needed help when they were just actors in a game." His mother reached over, covering his hands with hers. Or maybe they needed help in a different way. Maybe they were testing themselves to remember what it feels like to receive grace. Before Jack could respond, a small voice drifted from the hallway. Daddy Sophie, wrapped in a blanket like a sleepy burrito, padded into the kitchen, rubbing one eye. "You're supposed to be asleep," Jack said, voice softening. "I tried," she yawned, "but my brain won't be quiet." Jack pulled out the chair beside him. "Come here." She climbed into his lap, resting her head against his shoulder. For a moment, all was still. Then, muffled against his shirt, she whispered, "You test me on spelling. Maybe she tested you on kindness." Jack blinked. "What?" Sophie sat up, her voice clearer now. "You said the lady in the suit was part of the test, right? And you're mad because she tricked you." "Yes," he said slowly. "But maybe she wasn't trying to trick you. Maybe she just wanted to see if you'd share, like I did with the burger." Jack looked into her eyes so wide, so impossibly old for 8. "You think I failed?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. But maybe you're still being tested." Emma Sterling sat alone in her glass-walled office, the city lights below flickering like a heartbeat too fast to control. In front of her lay Jack's file, thick now, thicker than the others. Her assistant had added new pages, a photograph of Jack on a neighbor's roof, balancing on worn sneakers, tightening shingles with an old screwdriver. A note scribbled in pen volunteers' weekends. Doesn't ask for credit. Another photo showed Sophie handing out sandwiches near the shelter. Someone had captured Jack watching her from behind, arms crossed, face unreadable except for the eyes. Emma touched the edge of the photo. Candidate number 6. He had stormed out of her office that morning like a thundercloud. And yet, he haunted her. She rose, walking to the window. It was strange, she thought, how clearly she saw herself in him. Years ago, she'd lived above a liquor store. Her mother cleaned houses. Her father was a ghost who left before she could walk. Emma had gotten her first business card at 17, embossed proud, from a scholarship program not unlike the one she now ran. Back then, she believed kindness was enough. She had wanted to save the world with empathy and elbow grease. But then came boardrooms, deadlines, investors, legal teams, PR crises. Then came rules. Then came distance. She poured herself a glass of water and whispered aloud, "I used to believe kindness was enough. Then I learned kindness needs funding. And maybe people like Jack Turner reminded her of who she used to be, of the girl who once gave her lunch to a pregnant woman on the subway, of the girl who cried when her mother's back gave out, of the girl who dreamed of building homes with her own hands, not her name on a check." Emma turned back toward the file. Maybe Jack wasn't just a janitor. Maybe he was a mirror. And maybe mirrors are meant to show us what we've forgotten. She pressed the intercom. "Harold, get me the diner footage again, and tell legal to prepare a new proposal, one without strings." There was a pause. Then Harold's voice came through. "Understood, ma'am. Shall I mark candidate number 6 as active?" Emma's lips curved just slightly. Mark him as essential. Jack lay awake. Sophie snoring softly in the next room. He stared at the ceiling, hearing the storm outside begin to fade. One drip at a time, like the city was washing something off its skin. He turned over, eyes landing on the unopened folder on the counter. And for the first time, he didn't look away. The gate creaked like a ghost remembering better days. Jack pushed it open with one hand while the other held Sophie's backpack strap. Weeds clawed at the crumbling sidewalk, windows were boarded shut, and the faded sign overhead read, "Northbridge Community Center." "Everyone deserves a place," he exhaled. "Used to come here after school," he murmured. "Your grandma taught ESL in room 4. Sophie squinted up at the building like it might fall apart if she looked too hard. "Was it always this?" Crunchy Jack chuckled. "No, baby. It used to smell like peanut butter and pencil shavings." They stepped inside. Dust greeted them in waves. Sunlight slanted through cracked window panes, catching flecks in the air like dancing memories. Sophie walked slowly, arms out like she was balancing on invisible hope. Jack knelt to examine the wall by the gym. Still there, the mural of kids holding hands, though time had faded it to near ghostliness. He didn't hear the footsteps behind them. "Is this where you imagined it?" a voice asked. Jack turned fast. She stood in the doorway, hands in the pockets of a long trench coat. No assistants, no clipboard, just Emma Sterling in boots too clean for a place this forgotten. "What are you doing here?" Jack asked, wary. Emma didn't answer right away. Her eyes scanned the room, its bones and stories. "I read about the mural," she said finally. "Didn't realize it was still here." Sophie peeked around the corner and her face lit up. Miss Queen Emma's face softened. "Hi again, Sophie." Without hesitation, Sophie ran up and hugged her. Emma froze just for a heartbeat and then laughed. An actual laugh. Light and real, like it had been locked up for years, and this little girl had found the key. Jack blinked. He couldn't remember hearing that laugh in their previous conversations. "She calls you that because you looked like the Queen of Ice Cream in one of her books," he said, trying not to smile. "Well," Emma smirked, "I suppose that's better than the Ice Queen." Jack looked away. Debatable. She stepped closer, eyes on the warped floors and chipped paint. "I came to see it for myself." "Your dream. I figured if you won't come to the foundation, maybe the foundation needs to come to you." Jack folded his arms. "Didn't realize coming to me meant bringing a camera crew." Emma raised an eyebrow. "No crew, no PR. Just me. And a pair of boots I probably shouldn't have worn." A long silence stretched between them, filled with echoes of what could have been. Emma gestured toward the back hallway. "Will you walk me through it? Show me what you see when you look at this place." Jack hesitated. Sophie tugged his sleeve. "Please, Daddy." She laughed. Jack sighed. "All right, but no speeches." They walked the halls together. Jack pointed out where the kitchen used to be, where kids lined up for sandwiches after school. He showed her the gym with the broken floorboards, the room that used to house the tiny library now filled with nothing but old folding chairs and the smell of mildew. "I was gonna fix the floors first," he muttered, running a hand along a door frame. This place had heart. Just needed someone to remember it. Emma nodded. And now Jack looked around. Now it's a skeleton. She studied him. "You don't talk like a janitor. I talk like a father who's had to fix more than floors." They stepped outside. The sky was turning. Clouds rolled in gray and heavy. Emma pulled her coat tighter. "Looks like rain." Jack started to respond when a drop hit his temple. Then another. Within seconds it was pouring. He glanced at her, then sighed and reached into Sophie's backpack, pulling out a small beat-up umbrella, the kind with one bent spoke and faded cartoon stars. He opened it and held it over Emma without saying a word. It barely covered her shoulders. "You're going to get soaked," she said. He shrugged. "I've been through worse storms." Emma stared at him, truly stared. Not at the janitor, not at the candidate, but at the man who shared a burger he couldn't afford fixed roofs with his bare hands and still had enough grace to keep a stranger dry. Jack caught her looking. "What?" She hesitated, then said, "You're infuriating." He smiled slightly. "I've been called worse." The rain drummed above them, softening the world like the city itself was leaning in to listen. Emma's voice lowered. "Why won't you let people help you?" Jack's jaw worked. "Because help usually comes with a receipt. This time it doesn't. Then it comes with expectations." She didn't argue. Instead, she looked at the umbrella, flimsy and ridiculous between them. "You protect everyone else. But who protects you?" Jack didn't answer. Sophie ran out from under the awning, twirling in the rain. Her laughter echoed against the brick. Jack watched her for a moment, then said quietly, "I don't need protecting. I just need the world to stop looking away." Emma swallowed. "Maybe that's what I'm trying to do." They stood like that for a moment under a broken umbrella in the middle of a storm, letting silence say what words couldn't. And just before the clouds started to lift, Jack said the thing he didn't mean to say. "She reminds me of who I used to be." Emma blinked. "Your daughter?" He nodded. "She still believes kindness wins. And you don't." He looked at her. "I want to." Back in the car, Emma sat with damp sleeves and a full heart. She looked at the photo of the mural again on her phone. Kids holding hands across peeling paint. Then she opened her email and began typing a subject line, "Community Center Proposal." Revised terms beneath it. She wrote just 2 words, "No conditions," and hit send. "Come in." Emma's voice cut through the quiet of the glass-paneled conference room. Jack stepped inside his work boots, making soft thuds against the polished marble floor. The space was clinical modern, all sharp lines and quiet power. He felt out of place like a toolbox left on a crystal table. At the far end of the room, a massive blueprint stretched across the glass wall, backlit like stained glass in a cathedral. It shimmered in hues of sterling blue and ivory white. She gestured toward it. "This is the vision." Jack squinted. "That's the community center." Emma nodded. Sterling Turner Community Initiative. $25 million project. Full rebuild, kitchen, classrooms, greenhouse, a tech lab, solar-powered, LEED certified, designed to last 50 years. Jack walked toward it, jaw tight. It was beautiful, coldly beautiful. Everything gleamed. Everything was straight, polished, symmetrical. And somehow, empty. Emma continued. "Construction can start in 6 weeks. Your name would be on the cornerstone. I've cleared the board's concerns." Jack turned slowly. "Cleared them how I made it personal." He frowned. "So I'm a charity case with a ribbon and a photo op." Emma bristled. "That's not what this is." Jack stepped closer to the blueprint. "It looks like a tech firm, not a neighborhood home. Where's the kitchen that smells like burnt toast and second chances? Where's the cracked sidewalk kids use for hopscotch?" Emma crossed her arms. "This is not nostalgia. This is progress." "No," Jack said quietly. "This is what money thinks kindness looks like." The room stiffened. She walked to the other end of the design, tapped the digital wall screen. Jack, the old center, was condemned. "This is functional, durable, safe, and sterile," he replied. "You're building a monument, Emma. Not a sanctuary. Money builds. Sentiment stalls." Jack's hands clenched. "You ever sit next to a kid who hasn't eaten all day? You ever patch a roof with your own shirt to keep the rain off someone else's baby?" Sentiment didn't stall me, Emma. It kept me going. She didn't look away. He stepped closer. "You're scared. That if this place feels too human, too messy, people like your board won't write the check." She snapped back. "I'm not scared of mess. I'm scared of waste." Silence fell. They stood there, two hearts, both battered, both burning, staring at the same design, but seeing different futures. Then a knock at the glass broke the tension. It was Sophie. She held something behind her back and beamed like sunshine didn't need permission to enter. "Hi, Miss Queen," she whispered, stepping in with cautious excitement. Emma softened just a bit. "Hello, Sophie." Jack blinked. "I told you to wait downstairs." "I was waiting," she said, "but I made something. For both of you." From behind her back, she pulled out a folded piece of paper, wrinkled at the corners, covered in crayon. She handed it to Emma. It was a drawing. A large red heart in the center, split into 3 uneven parts. Inside the heart, 3 stick figures. One with brown hair and a mop. One in a purple dress with a crown. One, small in the middle, holding both their hands. Written across the top in careful messy letters, "The Community Heart Daddy." Me, Miss Queen Emma, didn't speak. She sat down slowly. Her hand traced the heart on the page. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then finally, no blueprint I've seen felt more real than this. Jack watched her. Emma cleared her throat, her voice quieter than he'd ever heard it. "What's the yellow line connecting us?" Sophie giggled. "That's the sandwich we shared. At the diner. I made it longer so it touches everybody." Emma stared at the line. Tears didn't fall, but something inside her did. The wall she'd built out of board meetings, bad faith donors, stockholder pressure cracked just enough for sunlight. She looked at Jack, then Sophie. "May I keep this?" Sophie nodded. "It's yours now." Emma rose slowly. "We'll rework the design. It won't just be mine, or the board's, or even yours, Jack." She looked at the drawing again. "It will belong to everyone who ever needed a place where they weren't invisible." Jack exhaled. His hands loosened. His shoulders dropped just enough. still unsure, but maybe willing. Sophie reached for Jack's hand and whispered, "Told you kindness grows back." He pinned the crayon drawing above the kitchen table right next to the list of overdue bills and the crooked family photo. His mother looked over his shoulder. "You think she means it?" Jack nodded once. She saw it, really saw it. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, but inside the kettle whistled and the paper heart fluttered slightly in the draft. Emma sat alone in her office blueprint still glowing on the wall behind her. She placed Sophie's drawing on the table. Then, reaching for her pen, she wrote 3 new words on the cover page of the master plan: "Build with heart." The scent of paint and old wood filled the air as Jack knelt beside a cracked foundation wall, rubbing dust from his hands. Children played in the distance, chasing chalk lines drawn onto pavement, and an elderly woman stood nearby watching him patch the corner with weathered precision. "This part's always leaked," she said. Jack smiled. "Then we'll seal it twice. No more soggy socks, I promise." She chuckled. "We used to dry our shoes on the radiator back when the center had one that worked. We'll bring that back." Jack nodded. The radiator, the warmth, all of it. He rose, brushed off his knees, and jotted a note on a clipboard that was already cluttered with input wider door frames, a ramp to the garden. More hooks in the coat room for children who'd never owned one. The community didn't want luxury. They wanted dignity. They wanted to be seen. Polished wood, crystal water glasses, neckties tight with suspicion. Emma sat at the head of the table as the board members reviewed the latest project update. Pages flipped, pens tapped, eyebrows raised. One voice finally broke the silence. A janitor said, "Richard Pike, CFO. Emma, you're really letting a janitor co-lead a $25 million rebuild?" She didn't blink. "Jack Turner is more than a janitor. Is he a licensed contractor, an urban planner, an executive of any kind? He's the voice of the people who will use this place," she replied. Another member, Dr. Lyons, leaned forward. "Our donors are accustomed to prestige. He doesn't even wear a suit." Emma's voice cooled. Prestige didn't share his meal with strangers. Prestige didn't patch broken ceilings on his day off. Jack did. "Intentions don't write reports," Richard countered. "This foundation thrives on structure, Emma. On control." Emma stood slowly. "And maybe that's the problem. We've built so many buildings for people we've never once listened to." Jack leaned against a pillar beam, sipping from a steaming vending machine coffee in a thin paper cup. Emma walked toward him. He didn't look up as he offered her the second cup in his other hand. She took it, hesitating. He smiled faintly. "It's bitter, but it keeps you going." Emma let out a breath. "That's your motto, isn't it?" "Not mine," he said, "but it's what I've got." They stood quietly, the sounds of a city settling into dusk all around them. Horns far away. A dog bark. Kids laughing in chalk dust. "I had a partner," one she said softly. "Business, personal. We started this foundation together. He said kindness was a good look on me, until it cost us a contract. Then he said, it made me weak." Jack turned to her. "So you stopped being kind?" Emma's eyes were steady. "No, I just stopped letting anyone see it. You know, Jack said money betrays. People heal, but only if they're given a chance." Emma didn't answer right away. Her thumb rubbed the rim of the coffee cup. He said, "I'd never make it in this world unless I learned to weaponize generosity, to turn empathy into currency." She looked at Jack. "You make it look so unstrategic." He smiled. "Maybe that's why it works." Richard Pike paced outside Emma's office phone, pressed to his ear. "We have an optics problem," he whispered. The press already sniffed out the janitor angle. "We need contingency." Inside the office, Emma stood at her window staring out over the city. In her hand was Sophie's crayon drawing, now laminated, framed, and hung behind her desk. She tapped a voice memo button on her phone. "Jack Turner strengths empathy, lived experience, natural leadership. Weaknesses: lack of formal credentials, unpredictable under pressure. But she paused, capable of uniting people without using fear or funding. She stopped the recording and smiled. Sophie stirred in her sleep. Jack tucked the blanket tighter around her shoulders. His mother watched from the doorway. "You're in deep now." Jack nodded. "They want someone who's polished. I'm someone who's patched." His mother chuckled. "Polished surfaces crack, but patched ones they hold. What if I mess it up, Mom?" She stepped closer. "Then you fix it. The same way you've always done, one screw, one word, one kindness at a time." Jack kneels beside teenagers tagging graffiti, asking them what colors they'd want on the new mural wall. Emma debates with architects over lowering the lobby ceiling to make it feel less like a museum, more like a living room. Jack rewrites a grant application with handwritten notes and grammar corrections from Sophie taped to the margin. Emma rejects a luxury tile supplier in favor of a local stoneworker who once ran an after-school program. Sunset. Jack and Emma stand side by side overlooking the neighborhood. Below them, scaffolding rises. Children cheer someone blasts Motown from a cracked speaker. Joy lives here in drywall dust and domino games, and someone's aunt passing out lemonade in paper cups. Emma sets down her tablet. "Do you think it'll be enough?" Jack sips his coffee. "I think if it feels like home, they won't care how shiny the floor is." She looks at him. Then she says, barely above a whisper, "Sometimes I think the floor was never the problem." The wind howled down the steel skeleton of what was meant to be a dream. The Sterling Turner Community Center stood only halfway, complete beams, bare concrete cracking from the last cold snap and tarps snapping like angry flags. Jack shoveled debris alone, his boots heavy with dried cement. The site was nearly abandoned now, like a song cut mid-verse. From a distance, Sophie watched from a folding chair wrapped in her dad's old flannel jacket, hugging a sketch pad. She didn't say anything. She just drew. "Emma, we warned you." Richard Pike threw a thick folder on the table. The headline screamed from the top page, "Janitor's Folly, 25mm Dream Becomes Manhattan's Most Expensive Mistake." The contractor's exit triggered a full-blown investor exodus, he snapped. "We lost 2 major donors this morning." Emma's face was pale but still. "We'll find alternatives." "No, you won't," snapped another board member. "Not unless you detach from the headline. Right now, you are the mistake." Another voice, softer but just as sharp. "You need to remove Jack Turner. Clean break, publicly." Emma didn't speak for a long time. Then, "He didn't break this project." "Doesn't matter," Richard said, "but he can fix your image. Step away, and we rebuild trust." Emma's hands clenched under the table. The letter was short, simple, typed on cheap paper. "Dear Emma, you were right to believe in kindness. You were also right to believe it needs structure. Let me be the scaffolding, not the headline. Please don't defend me. Just finish the building. I'll keep sweeping the dust where I belong. Jack." He folded it and slipped it into an envelope. No signature flourish, no bitterness, just quiet dignity. Sophie found him on the fire escape a moment later. "You're quitting?" she asked. "I'm stepping back," he said. "But you love this." He smiled. "I love what it stands for. But sometimes someone has to be the shadow so the light shows up better." Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. "If you disappear, who'll remind her what kindness looks like?" Emma sat in her glass-walled office, blinds drawn, phone off the city blurred behind her. Jack's letter rested open beside a cold cup of coffee. Her eyes were red. Her heels were off. Her thumb traced a faint coffee ring on the letter, smudging one corner. A knock at the door. Margaret, her assistant, peeked in. "The press is gathering at the site. They're expecting a statement." Emma rose, smoothed her suit, and reached for flats instead of stilettos. Cameras clicked. A few skeptical workers watched from the shade. and Jack, still in his janitor uniform, was sweeping dust into piles near the entrance just as he always had. Sophie stood beside him, small but unmoving. Then a voice rang out. Jack. He turned. Emma was walking toward him. No entourage, no press rep, just a pair of rolled-up sleeves and mud-stained sneakers. She stopped in front of him, looked him in the eye. Then without a word she bent down, grabbed a shovel, and dug the blade into a pile of gravel. Gasps, clicks, video rolls. She tossed the gravel into a wheelbarrow. "You once told me kindness needs more than intention," she said, breathless. "It needs action. So here I am, ready to act." Jack blinked. "You don't have to." "I do," she interrupted, "because you already gave more than anyone. You gave your name, your pride, your place. Also, I could keep mine. This time we finish it together." She turned to the watching workers. "No more titles, no more headlines, just hands. Let's build the future with ours." A local journalist had snapped the photo just in time. Emma, hair pulled back in a messy bun, mud on her blouse, lifting bricks beside Jack in his scuffed work boots. The caption read, "CEO and Janitor save the future together." The image rocketed through social media. Comments poured in. "This is the leadership we need. If they can build this together, maybe we can rebuild anything. When the board gave up, they picked up shovels. I just donated. Let's help them finish it." A donation link embedded in the article crashed twice from traffic. By midnight, the project had regained half its funding. Jack stood staring out over the site lights, glowing now from temporary generators. Tarps replaced. Steel glinting under moonlight. Emma joined him, wiping her hands on a rag. "Looks different tonight," she said. Jack nodded. "Feels different, too. You know, she said I used to believe the world only listened to loud voices. Turns out," he replied, "they just needed one real one. They didn't say much else. They didn't need to." Emma presenting Sophie's community heart drawing on national TV. Jack in hard hat and reflective vest leading volunteers. Elderly residents planting flowers in the courtyard. Sophie drawing smiley faces on the new library walls, and a plaque freshly installed at the entrance, built by many hands, led by two hearts. In honor of the day, the janitor gave up everything, so that hope wouldn't have to. The morning sun kissed the polished windows of the Sterling Turner Community Center, turning the glass into gold. What had once been a shell of cracked concrete and forgotten dreams now stood as a beacon, alive, vibrant, and humming with laughter and purpose. Colorful ribbons fluttered along the iron fence. Children giggled, weaving between balloons. Seniors in folding chairs smiled beneath shady awnings. Food trucks lined the block, offering everything from tamales to hot chocolate. Murals stretched across the outer walls, one of them a stitched heart divided into 3 parts. Daddy. Me. Miss Queen. Jack stood in a fresh button-down shirt, though the sleeves were rolled up like always. His calloused hands gripped a pair of oversized scissors a little too big for him, a little too ceremonial. He looked down at Sophie. "You ready, kiddo Sophie?" Now almost 10, beamed in her red dress and shiny flats. A tiny badge pinned to her chest read, "Junior Founder." "Let's do it, Daddy." As the crowd hushed, Sophie stepped forward. The red ribbon fluttered across the front steps, tied between 2 oak posts they had carved together last summer. Emma handed her the microphone. Sophie cleared her throat. This place was just bricks and dust. Then my daddy believed in it. Miss Queen made it real. And I drew the heart. Laughter and claps. Emma dabbed her eyes discreetly. Sophie continued. Now this is a place where kids don't have to feel small, where kindness grows, like my daddy says. She turned to Jack. Your line, Dad. He chuckled. Took the mic. Kindness isn't weakness, Jack said, voice steady. It's the strongest foundation we have. The crowd erupted. Sophie cut the ribbon in one smooth snip. Sunlight poured through the skylights, casting soft light on the polished wood floors and wide halls. The gym buzzed with kids playing basketball. The kitchen ran cooking classes. The art room brimmed with color. In the main lobby, a wall bore hundreds of Polaroid photos, each showing a small act of kindness performed in the building over the past year: tutoring sessions, shelter drives, shared meals. Jack stood near the front desk when a line began forming. First came Mrs. Garcia holding a framed photo of her late husband. "You helped fix our heater that winter. I never forgot." Next, Big Mike from the diner handed Jack a paper bag. "Chocolate chip, extra gooey, from the recipe you gave my niece." Then, a teenage boy with a sketchbook, the same one Jack had given him on his release day from juvenile detention. "You told me the past wasn't concrete, that it could be chipped away." Jack's eyes misted as the boy hugged him. Later, under a white canopy outside a small stage awaited. Emma stepped up first. Dressed in navy slacks and no heels, she hadn't worn stilettos since the day she shoveled gravel beside Jack. Her voice was soft but firm. "A lot of people asked me why I'd tie the name Sterling to a janitor." She paused. "And I tell them because that janitor reminded me who I used to be before the boardrooms and glass walls, because his grit rebuilt not just a building, but hope." She turned to Jack. "This man isn't just a janitor. He's the reason this exists." A long silence. Then unexpectedly, she took his hand, looked at him, smiled. "And if I'm lucky, maybe he'll keep showing me what real strength looks like." Jack's brow furrowed in emotion. "Emma." Before he could say more, she leaned in and kissed him. Soft, brief, but deep with knowing. A heartbeat of stillness. Then the crowd rose in thunderous applause. Laughter. Tears. Clapping that echoed down the street like music. Sophie stood front row, fists in the air. "Go, Daddy!" Golden light bathed the small garden behind the center. Children played tag. Volunteers planted herbs. Wind chimes danced. Jack and Emma sat on a wooden bench beneath the mural of the stitched heart. "I never imagined this," Emma whispered. "You imagined," Bigger Jack replied. "You just forgot for a while." She rested her head lightly on his shoulder. "Promise me something," she said. "What's that?" "If we ever forget again, we come back here, to this bench, to the heart." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the old screwdriver Sophie had wrapped in ribbon months ago. "I carry it with me, every day." Emma smiled, brushing her thumb over the initials carved into its wooden handle. "Then we're home." The camera pulls back slowly, the center glowing warmly. Jack lifting Sophie onto his shoulders. Emma waving to an elderly man who's just entered a literacy class. A banner overhead reading, "Welcome to the Community of Second Chances." And on the plaque beside the door, "In honor of those who build with kindness." Because every heart deserves a place to grow. The bell above the door chimed with a soft, familiar ding, and the warmth of Murphy's diner wrapped around them like a blanket. Rain tapped gently against the window panes, but inside, everything glowed: the booths, the checkered floor, the coffee pots, even the old jukebox humming a quiet Sinatra tune. Jack paused at the threshold. Emma stood beside him in jeans and a knit sweater, her hair down. No entourage, no boardroom. And between them, skipping ahead in sparkly sneakers, was Sophie. She pointed at the corner booth. "Their booth. It's still here," she whispered. Jack nodded. Some things don't need changing. The same cracked leather seats. The same view of the neon sign flickering outside. And that same flicker of memory of a night long ago when hunger met grace. Sophie climbed into the booth and reached into her small backpack. From it, she pulled out a brown paper bag. Inside, one warm burger wrapped with care. "Murphy said it's on the house," she grinned. "But I told him I wanted to pay." Jack raised an eyebrow. With what money? Sophie opened her hand. A crumpled dollar bill and 2 quarters. Emma laughed softly. "She's been saving from the lemonade stand at the center." Sophie unwrapped the burger and carefully tore it into 3 parts. Not halves, not quarters, just like she did once before. "One for Daddy," she said, sliding a piece over. One for Miss Queen, placing another piece gently in front of Emma, and one for me. Then, as if the words were sacred, she added, "It tastes better when we share." They ate in silence for a moment, not out of awkwardness but reverence. The kind of quiet that only comes when the heart is too full for words. Jack leaned back. "You know," he said, wiping his hands, "if someone told me 2 years ago I'd be back here, with both of you. After all this?" Emma looked at him. "You would have laughed." He shook his head. "I would have cried, because I wouldn't have believed I deserved it." She reached across the table, her hand finding his. "You didn't just deserve it, Jack. You earned it, one act of kindness at a time." Jack smiled. "Still can't believe you're eating a burger. I figured you for the salad and sparkling water type." Emma smirked. "Turns out janitor food builds empires." Sophie giggled. "Can I put that on a t-shirt?" They laughed. But behind the laughter was something else, peace. Not the peace that comes from stillness, but the peace that comes after the storm has passed and the house still stands. Outside, the rain eased. Streetlights flickered in puddles. Across the street, a new mural had been painted on a brick wall, a heart made of tiny community symbols, books, paintbrushes, wrenches, coffee cups, music notes. At its center, 3 initials, STC. The window glass fogged slightly, but the golden diner light cast a soft glow on the reflection of the neon sign just above them. The heart that built a community. Jack stared at it for a long beat. Emma followed his gaze. "Do you think they know?" she asked. "Who, the world? That it all started here, with a tired man, a little girl, and one burger." Jack looked at Sophie, then back at Emma. "They don't have to know, as long as we never forget." The camera slowly pulls back from the family in the booth, past the counter where Murphy wipes a glass with a smile, past the quiet hum of late-night coffee drinkers, through the glass where rain glistens on pavement, and up to the neon sign glowing above the door. He gave away his last meal, but what he built fed thousands, in a world that tells us to take he chose to give and changed everything. Fade to black. Then, Sterling Turner Community Foundation, serving over 140,000 people annually and counting. Built on kindness, sustained by love. Sometimes, all it takes is one quiet act of kindness to start a ripple that reaches further than we ever imagined. Jack didn't have much, but he gave what little he had, not to be seen, not to be rewarded, but because it was right. And in a world that often rewards power and pride, it was compassion that built something eternal. Have you ever done something kind for a stranger, or witnessed someone else's quiet kindness? We'd love for you to share it in the comments. Your story might be the spark someone else needs today. Where in the world are you watching from? Whether you're in sunny Florida, rainy Scotland, the heart of Texas, or a quiet town in Malaysia. Drop your location in the comments. We read every one, and we love seeing how far these stories travel. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us bring more healing, human, and heartfelt stories to life. And finally, thank you. From the bottom of our storytelling hearts, thank you for spending your time with us. Until the next chapter, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never underestimate the power of one small, selfless choice.